Hello everybody, you're welcome back again to the Reggae Appreciation Society. In 1978, just 5 years after the breakup of the original Wailers band, the trio of Bob, Bunny and Peter were all enjoying successful solo careers. Bob was now an international megastar and the main man at Island Records. Bunny Wailer had fulfilled his contract obligations to Island by delivering 2 magnificent albums in Black Heart Man and Protests, and was pushing his music on his own label, Solomonic Records. Peter had released his second album, Equal Rights, a year before and was gearing up to work on new material for the third one. He was hoping to really spread his music on a global scale and needed a vehicle to get this going. The opportunity seemed to come when he entered into a promising partnership with legendary rock band The Rolling Stones as the first artist on their record label. It seemed like a match made in heaven. The Stones were probably the biggest band in the world and attracted average crowds of more than 100,000 people per concert. It was expected that their influence, coupled with Peter's genius-level musical ability, would provide a super successful partnership. Tosh had been disillusioned with the record industry due to his experiences with Coxsone Dodd and Island Records, but he dared to believe that this new relationship would actually work. But in a few years, the relationship with the Rolling Stones would deteriorate and even grind to an acrimonious halt. And when we consider the larger-than-life eccentric personality of Tosh, with the wacky and equally crazy egos that were in the Rolling Stones, what you get is a turbulent and bizarre business relationship. But how did Peter and the Rolling Stones get together in the first place? It all began in April 1978 at the now legendary One Love Peace concert, which held at the National Stadium in Kingston and was organized with the aim of bringing peace to Jamaica, which was at the time being torn apart by a political civil war. The concert featured the biggest names in Jamaican music, like the Mighty Diamonds, Jacob Miller, Dennis Brown, Culture, Peter Tosh, and Bob Marley. Marley was billed to be the star performer on the night and famously crowned the evening when he invited the political arch-enemies, Prime Minister Michael Manley and opposition leader Edward Seaga on stage and made them join hands in a show of reconciliation. But Peter Tosh was the one who stole the show when he verbally tongue-lashed the leaders of Jamaica, who were seated just a few meters from the stage, where he stood, blowing clouds of smoke in their faces. Tosh's 66-minute monologue electrified the crowd like no one else had done that evening. In the audience that night was a certain Mick Jagger, frontman of the Rolling Stones. He was held spellbound by Peter's immense stage presence and charisma, and decided on the spot that the stepping razor just had to join his team. After the concert, Jagger and his manager, Earl McGrath, arranged a meeting with Peter and agreed to a 3-album record deal. The first album released under Rolling Stones Records was the magnificent Bush Doctor album that had the incredible Bush Doctor track as well as I'm the Toughest, and the lead single, You Gotta Walk and Don't Look Back, a bouncy duet that featured Mick Jagger. The album was a smash hit in Jamaica and gained ground in the international charts beyond Peter's first 2 albums. The collaboration with the Rolling Stones seemed to be yielding an immediate effect. Tosh and his band were included on the Rolling Stones World Tour, and after initial rejection, he began to win over a legion of Rolling Stones fans. But the euphoria began to evaporate as Peter began to get frustrated that despite all the seeming heavy album sales and sold-out shows, he and his band were still not getting their due financially. Peter was outspoken and painfully blunt, and this intense personality trait led to clashes with Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, 2 personalities that also matched Tosh's with their big egos and eccentric traits. After a prolonged period of waiting for his money and not getting paid, Peter, in his usual form, told anybody who would listen that he was going to deal with the Stones. He went to the studios one day where Jagger was recording to confront him, and when Jagger saw him, he stopped singing, walked up to Peter and fell on his knees, saying, "I heard you've been threatening to kill me." Jagger dramatically opened up his shirt, saying, "Come on, do it now." Peter's manager and all the people in the studio quickly moved out of the room as they were not sure what was about to happen next. After a while, they opened up the studio doors and peeked inside. They had been expecting to see Mick Jagger on the floor lifeless, but to everyone's shock, both men were jamming happily in the studio, playing some serious music. As Tosh was leaving, Jagger told Peter that he was sorry and had no idea that the Rolling Stones record label had been owing him so much money and promised to sort it out as soon as possible. He wrote him a big check and told him that it was a personal gift. On top of the inconsistencies in financial matters, Peter was also upset at the lack of promotion by his new label. Even after more than a year with the Stones, there hadn't been much of an improvement in his international visibility, in stark contrast to the fantastic promotion that Bob Marley had been getting from Island Records. The thing I believe that really got to Peter was the fact that the music he was making in those days was awesome and truly worthy of more international exposure. But the truth was that Island Records was a huge company with almost 20 years of experience on the international stage, while the Rolling Stones label was just a small label owned by rock stars, with Peter as their first artist. Also, according to people close to Peter, it looked like this new label was trying to water down Peter's sound and make it more commercially acceptable to Western consumers. By the time the Mystic Man album was released in 1979, the clashes with the Rolling Stones had almost brought the relationship to breaking point. While Mick Jagger had a soft spot for Peter and was less confrontational, Keith Richards, who was a legit badass and tough guy, had no bones about going toe-to-toe with Peter Tosh, if necessary. The two would almost collide violently sometime around 1980, when Peter tried to take over Richards' mansion in Ocho Rios, Jamaica. Peter was in the process of writing songs that would make up his next album and asked Richards if he could stay at his home while getting inspiration. Richards agreed, but little did he know that Peter, who was being owed a lot of money by the Rolling Stones, had been planning to seize his house. After a couple of months, Richards visited Jamaica. When he tried to get his house back, he called Peter, who warned him not to come to the house. He threatened to shoot Richards with a machine gun found in one of the bedrooms. Richards, like I said, being a badass, called Peter's bluff and said he was coming anyway. So Peter left the house, but before leaving, he trashed the place, but let some goats loose in the house, which ate up the expensive furniture and soiled the floors. Of course, to Keith Richards' great annoyance. This close shave meant the final breakdown in the relationship, and after the release of Wanted, Dead and Alive in 1981, Peter and Rolling Stones Records would part ways, an unfortunate end to an initially promising relationship. The experience left Peter thoroughly disappointed and totally disillusioned with the music industry in general and what he eloquently called the shitstem. He took a break from music and in 1982 went on a 4-week trip to Africa, specifically Benin Republic and Nigeria, where he got up to some hilarious adventures with his manager Copeland Forbes. We made a video about his African escapades, so feel free to check it out in the pinned comment section below. His experiences during his first visit to Africa not only reinvigorated him, but inspired him to write the songs that would make up the next album, Mama Africa, which came out in 1983 under EMI Records. For all the battles with the Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger still holds Peter's memory in high regard and still speaks very highly of him. Jagger was scheduled to be a guest and performer at the opening of the Peter Tosh Museum in 2016, but had to pull out at the last minute. As the Rolling Stones had a concert on the same day as the event, he still sent his warm regards and congratulated the Peter Tosh family in a televised video message. The record deal with the Rolling Stones lasted for just 3 years and might have gone on to become a world-beating partnership, but I personally believe it was doomed to fail due to the strong personalities of all parties involved, as well as the lack of experience on the part of the Rolling Stones in handling musicians, especially the ones as established as Peter Tosh. Maybe with more restraint from Peter and better management by the label, the story might have been very different in the end. So there you have it. Thank you for watching the video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, Jah bless.